Number, any number. Let's play hardball. Good evening, I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Donald Trump has shown in the past an ability to trump a bad story with some wild statement that grabs the media attention away. Now in his first days as president, he seems to be trumping a good story. The headline for the new president tonight should be jobs, jobs, jobs. He's meeting with union leaders, business leaders, automakers, and congressional leaders of both parties. He's cutting regulations, withdrawing from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and going ahead with the Keystone Pipeline, insisting it be built with U.S.-made steel. That's all stuff that people who voted for him and many who didn't want to hear. Instead, the oxygen in the brief room today at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is taken up by the false claim, the bogus claim made by the president himself that widespread voter fraud in the range of 3 to 5 million votes by people in this country illegally explains away his popular vote loss to Hillary Clinton. Wow. Trump's claim came at the beginning of a meeting with congressional leaders yesterday when Trump spent about the first 10 minutes talking about the campaign and about how 3 to 5 million illegals, he called them, voted in the election. According to the Post fact checker, this is a bogus claim with no documented proof. The origin of Trump's dodgy numbers appears to be the conspiracy theorist and 9/11 truther Alex Jones, whose website published this headline back in November. Quote, report. 3 million votes in presidential election cast by illegal aliens, close quote. Well, according to PolitiFact, the report is actually a tweet. And the person who authored the tweet won't explain how he arrived at his figure. He would also not say what the data is or where it came from or what methodology he used. Well, today, Trump's press secretary, the guy with the toughest job in the world, Sean Spicer, backed him up and suggested a White House investigation could happen.
Does the president believe that millions voted illegally in this election?
The president does believe that. He has stated that before. I think he stated his concerns of voter fraud and people voting illegally during the campaign. And he continues to maintain that belief based on studies and evidence that people have presented to him.
What evidence do you have?
As I said, I think the president has believed that for a while based on studies and information he has.
Wouldn't he want an investigation of this?
Well, this is but Mara, as I've noted several times now, he's believed this for a long time, and I think he won fairly overwhelmingly. So he's not. And look, we'll work.
I'm asking you, why not investigate something that is
maybe we will.
Do you believe there was widespread voter fraud?
My job is not. Look,
how can he be comfortable with his win if he believes
he's very comfortable with his
3 million votes? Maybe he didn't win.
No, he's very comfortable with his win. It's an electoral-based system. He got 306 electoral votes.
Well, that's the second time in 3 days that Spicer's been forced to defend his boss's questionable numbers to the press. Here he was on Saturday night.
We know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
Well, you don't want to get your train schedule from this guy. According to the Washington Post, after Sean Spicer delivered that rebuke to the press Saturday night, many critics thought Spicer went too far and compromised his own integrity. But in Trump's mind, Spicer's attack on the news media was not forceful enough. The president was also bothered that the spokesman read at times haltingly from printed material. Anyway, Ashley Packers, a reporter with the Washington Post and a co-author of today's story on the White House. What's going on there? Michael Steele is the former chair of the Republican National Committee. David Corn's Washington Bureau Chief for Mother Jones. This is really weird. First of all, I thought that Jeff Zeleny of the New York Times had a great question. He said to Sean Spicer, do you believe this 3 to 5 million vote theft by illegal immigrants?
Yeah.
Because it forced him to admit, okay, I'm a flack. I'm just here doing my job. I got a boss watching on the nanny cam. I better say the right thing and better say it with some force. But he didn't answer that question. He didn't say he believed it.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly dodged the question, and I think the reason why is because he's the spokesperson who is channeling Donald Trump, both the message, the facts, or the alternative facts, as the case may be, and even the tone and the demeanor, and when he can swing it, the look. I mean, that is his job, and that is what every president demands of their press secretary, but Donald Trump more than most.
Why would Donald Trump leak to the newspapers through his confidant, I think he was quoted, or she was quoted, saying he didn't like the fact that Sean Spicer, this is the presidency of the United States. Doesn't like the fact he doesn't own any dark suits. So after reading that in the paper on the wires this morning, Mike Allen's a piece or something this morning, in walks Sean Spicer in a dark suit for the first time. I mean, is this how the President of the United States communicates and on the issues he chooses to communicate with his national spokesman?
Let's be clear, he also communicates through Twitter, but one thing...
But to somebody working for him, why didn't he call him and say, hey, Sean, wear a dark suit tomorrow? I mean, I don't think it matters, but it did to him.
Well, either way, Sean certainly got the message, and you could see that he changed the color, the cut.
Flashy tie.
Yeah, he looked a lot better in Donald Trump's eyes, I think.
Michael, this is sad because he's leaking the fact he doesn't like the guy's looks. This is truly pathetic. This really reads like he's casting Miss Universe
This is how Trump rolls. I mean, I think Trump is a guy who has his finger on every button. Not just the ones that relate to the
why doesn't he have the numbers?
And the nuclear button, too.
But wait a minute. What about the 3 to 5 million people? I assume he means Hispanic people who came in the country without papers. I guess that's what he's talking about, assuming they didn't vote for him, although 29% of Hispanic voters did vote for him. And by the way, as you pointed out in the green room here, I'm going to steal your line here. There's only, I know it's not, there's 11 million people here in this country without papers illegally.
Right.
Okay, that means 3 million of them risked being picked up by somebody or other. They came out and it shows patriotism. I would give them all papers now. They are they're better voters than most people. They have a better voting record than most people.
This is what I have to say about all of that.
If that ever happened.
You are in the Roosevelt room with the political leadership of both parties talking about your agenda. That would tell me you won the election. It's not like you're sitting at a cafe having a cold cup of
coffee. Who's going to tell him?
Trying to figure out what happened in your election. So the focus on the fact that 3 million people, 5 million people, it's all about having lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. That's what rubs this man to his core.
Well, this is what's...
And the problem is his people can't get him off of that stick.
Well, this is what's dangerous.
By the way, he's still fighting over the number of people who showed up at the inauguration. He's showing up. He argues over the poll numbers on who won the debates.
Yeah. What seems to matter most to Donald Trump through the campaign and up to now is Donald Trump. And the fact that he can't get off the stick, as you put it, and when he goes to the CIA wall that memorializes...
What's the stick?
No, he just can't get off of that issue.
He goes to the CIA, he stands in front of a wall that commemorates people who've died, and he goes on about how he's been on more covers than Tom Brady. There is something wrong with a person who can't see beyond his own egocentric needs, and it's not going to change, and it leads him to believe in delusional issues
here's where it's
like
gonna
3 to 5 million people or the size of the inauguration.
He's got to go in and argue with Congress, tough cookies like Chuck Schumer and Paul Ryan, and he's got to argue facts with them. And in the end, that's how he's going to win these legislative fights, knowing what he's talking about. Donald Trump's assertion, that's all it is, that millions of illegal immigrants, while in the country illegally voted for him. That was peddled online by conspiracy websites after the election. It's been widely refuted. The California Secretary of State today called it a corrosive lie. Many Republicans rejected the claim as well. Let's watch them.
Did you feel the need to correct him? And does it trouble you that he continues to hold a belief like this that isn't based in fact?
Look, I've already commented on that. I've seen no evidence to that effect, and I've made that very, very clear.
I have no evidence whatsoever, and I don't know that anyone does, that there were that many illegal people who voted. And frankly, it doesn't matter. He's the president, and whether 20 million people voted, it doesn't matter anymore. He's the president, and I'm not sure why he brought it up.
I'm telling you, he is now the president of the United States. He's the chief law enforcement officer in he sits at the top of our nation's legal structure. He's in charge of the executive branch. This has to stop. One of two things need to happen quickly. He needs to share with us the information he has, or he needs to recant this.
I'm kind of amazed that, even the major metropolitan papers, the quality papers like yours and the Times and the Wall Street Journal, they try to avoid really radical language. Lie was on the front page, I think, of the Times today.
Yeah.
That these numbers he's putting out are lies.
I mean, I think sort of early on, journalists realized that this election cycle in particular was taking place in sort of a post-truth world. And because of that, you saw a move away from the traditional, some critics say this, other people say this, to when you have the facts that something is a falsehood, something is bogus, something is not true, then it is okay to call it what it is, which is simply a lie. And that's what you're seeing happening in these papers.
I think they have to. I think that when
they have to call it,
what it is, because otherwise you do get sucked into that alternative fact. universe.
Alt fact.
Look what
And yeah, all fact. And that is not the space that I think the American press, of whatever stripe.
Okay, David, you never worked on the inside. I have. At some point, the people around the president, men, women of whatever age, whatever vintage they are politically, have to go up there and say, boss, I'm your biggest true believer. You got to drop this rap. This is no good for you. You got to get off of it. You got to say, like you did with the birther thing, I'm cashing in my chips. I'm not going to say one more day.
But he really
do that.
He really didn't get off the Bertha thing.
He did.
And, I mean,
he said he's an American. He's born American.
Yeah, but he wouldn't fess up to the fact that he had done this for 5 years.
Oh.
And throughout the campaign, again and again, we sat at this very table, Chris, from the time he attacked John McCain onward, and we said, why don't the people around him tell him to stop tweeting, stop saying this, stop attacking Miss Universe, stop going after Kaiser Khan. And the truth of the matter is, he can't, he won't, and it's not going to stop. This is our president.
Well,
get used to it.
Apparently, you're right, but he seems unwilling to let it go when it comes to the size of his inaugural crowd. As I said today, he tweeted out today again this image, a photo delivered yesterday that will be displayed in the lower press hall. Another part of his problem. And according to Congressman Steny Hoyer from Maryland, who was at the meeting with the president yesterday, the topic of crowd size came up there.
He didn't change his point of view on the crowd size. It was
he brought it
from
up?
his perspective a very, very large crowd, and we didn't push it beyond that, but it was clear that this was still in his mind.
You know, during the, I'm going to be a little bipartisan here. You weren't here, but I was here during the whole Clinton mess. And for a long time, I sort of watched the people around him and think, who's going to be honest through this real mess? Because you have a president saying something that's not true. Everybody knows it's not true. He did have this relationship, for whatever you think of it. It was a fact. But some people around him, like Carville, would never deny it. He would just say that itsy-bitsy sex thing with his Alabama accent. In other words, he never denied it. And I always kept track of the ones who denied it and played like Spicer has to do. Because when you start getting into making your people lie with you, and use the United States government. Cabinet secretaries are going to be asked this. They're going to have to lie with them. You're misusing your office thoroughly. You know, it gets to be like Kim Jong-un. It gets to be like, oh, you got a great haircut today, Mr. President, or everything's great. Or, what do you know, you know all these stuff. What do they say about Kim Jong-un? He thinks he's the greatest novelist in the world, the greatest everything in the world, and they're all supposed to say it.
Yeah, and he can play basketball really well.
He's a great basketball player.
But this is a problem in so many...
If you make people lie for you...
It's a problem on so many levels. You've been there. If you can't take advice on these issues of war and peace and the economy, and you can't accept other facts that are beyond what you assume, you can't make good decisions, the people around you can't do their jobs, and the American public loses faith in you, as it already has.
Thank you, Michael Steele, David Corn, and Ashley Parker. Coming up, Trump's trying on the union label, meeting with union leaders at the White House. We'll find out what happened in that meeting with 2 union presidents who were there. Will they get behind him if he can get their people more work? This is Hardball, where the action is.